Sam, I don't hear you nor see you. I don't see or hear you.
Okay, there we go.
Ah, perfect.
Really?
Wonderful.
So this is our first DecentMed spotlight. Today we are here with Lori Graham. Lori is a functional nutritionist that helps women to lower their blood sugar and reverse the aging process. Lori has a website called nutrifyyourlife.com. Lori, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to everybody. This will be quite an informative time. I particularly am in the right place in my life to help other people, not just women, but also men, age well, mostly because of my age, which I'm not shy to say, which is 68. And, I've already exceeded my parents' lives, chronologically. And I believe that through the right inputs in terms of diet and lifestyle, and perhaps personalizing supplements here and there, that we can have a much healthier later in life period, and we can like switch that decline and push it forward maybe till 80 to 90 or 90 to 100 instead of 60 to 70 when a lot of people really experience it. And blood sugar that you mentioned is just one of the pillars of aging that becomes harder to manage if we keep eating the way we ate earlier in life. So, any questions about that?
Yes, so sorry, I'm trying to get this off the ground. StreamYard has given me some issues at the beginning. At first, I was supposed to just go live, but it didn't go live. So I'll just ask the questions at this moment, and if people start to come in. My first question for you, Lori, is what got you started in this industry? Why did you choose functional nutrition?
Well, I have always been a bit of a square peg in a round hole, and I was an occupational therapist for 35, almost 40 years. And I worked with the disease model. If somebody broke their hip, I taught people to be independent in their homes. If somebody broke a shoulder, I did therapy for the shoulder. If somebody had arthritis, then I would teach them compensatory strategies to do things to become independent. It became very clear to me that medicine was broken because the level of health that I experienced in my 30s and 40s as I was exercising and focused on eating clean. And I never went to a traditional doctor, I went to homeopaths and naturopaths. You know, I just thought I want to be on the prevention side, and then, couple that with the fact that my father died of a heart attack at just 60. I think he was just shy of 60. My mother had Lou Gehrig's disease, and she became my functional medicine study because I could tie together, once I started studying functional medicine, which was my naturopath recommended me to do that, but I could really see how her colitis and her migraines affected her timeline towards, her ultimately getting Lou Gehrig's disease. She was also a smoker, and she didn't exercise, and she ate white flour all the time. And, nobody knew anything about white flour and wheat and, Crohn's disease or celiac. We didn't talk about those things back then. So, I felt very frustrated being an OT because I would go into my patients' homes and their kids would bring them Dunkin' Donuts and, stuff from the bakery. And I'd be like, you can't eat that if you want to get well. You
Yep.
wondering why you're 300 pounds? You know? I mean, we used to have double visits, the PT and the OT, just because some of our patients were that heavy,
Wow.
if you can imagine. And both of us would be on. I have this, she's a friend of mine now, but Katie and I used to come in and hoist them up to the kitchen sink, and the kitchen sink took some of that weight. And honestly, these people ate poorly. You don't get that way unless you're giving terrible signals nutritionally to your body.
100%. And, that's what I've learned. And speaking with you, our naturopath on the platform, is realizing that, first of all, the body is interconnected. And I think a lot of people miss that step. And they, especially with traditional medicine, they, like you mentioned, if you have an issue with your wrist, you go to a wrist doctor. If you have an issue with your heart, you go to a heart doctor. And the reality is that a lot of times everything is connected. Nutrition is not just for weight loss, it's for prevention, it's for aging. So, for all you don't know, Lori recently posted a study by Nature Magazine that was speaking about plant-based diet and how eating a mostly plant-based diet can cause you to not only live longer but live and feel younger at the age of 70 and beyond. So can you touch on that?
Sure, that actually came up. That information came up on my feed. I don't even know if it was a doctor. He didn't have a doctor title, but I immediately went to check the study, and he was right. And what they were doing there was they were following midlife people, 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, somewhere around that number, for about 30 years.
Mm,
And they followed them from midlife, and they did not say they had to be vegan, but they don't mean vegan when they say plant-based. And I
okay.
like to say plant forward, maybe, where you're including a lot of the great nutrition and the great antioxidant support and the polyphenols that fight inflammation and that help your microbiome. And people who ate more plant forward actually were free of disease at the age of 70.
Wow.
And, that to me was like, I am so glad somebody studied this because I've intuited that. I mean, I'm an N of one looking at me, but I did the raw vegan diet for a while. You have no friends when you do that. I've been vegan. I am now eating, wild salmon, wild sable, herring, anything wild that's high in omega 3s because we need that anti inflammatory input. And I often say, and I've said this to you, Sam, that every decade of our lives, we should really do some labs to go, okay, what input can change here? Men and women alike make fewer hormones quantity wise as we age. We struggle, inflammation is a hallmark of aging.
Yeah.
Cognitive decline, a hallmark of aging. Neuromuscular decline, like how fast you can recover if you misstep, is a hallmark of aging. These are all the kinds of things, and cardiovascular disease, incredible. And, you know, can we possibly prevent? Cardiovascular disease is the number one killer. We're all going to
Yeah.
die. We're going to have some, whatever we die of, we're going to have some progressive cardiovascular decline. But if we put the right inputs in through diet and lifestyle, then we push that off until maybe a decline that'll happen fast. Nobody wants to live in a wheelchair. Nobody wants that,
Yeah.
you know?
It's funny because after that study, I started integrating more plant based myself. You know, even though I'm only 29, like for example, I had a taco today, and I heavy on the avocado, heavy on the onions, heavy on some lettuce. Just getting some kind of vegetables is key.
Right.
I think you would agree with that.
Right, I do. And sometimes I tell people, if you're having a hard time with food prep, then do a greens powder. Find an organic greens powder that suits your pocketbook as long as it's organic. AG1 is a really good one. It happens to be rather pricey, but just find a greens powder and bring the greens in that way.
Mm. So touch more on that. Like, what is some foods that you recommend for women as they age? Because something that you said that always blows my mind is that you've only had one hot flash in 20 years. And that's just insane because my mom is a little bit younger than you. She's 60 and she has hot flashes all the time. But I think it has to do with her nutrition. So, can you touch more on what women should eat as they enter 60 and get into 70?
So I think as early as one can, women, we're talking about right now, we should give up processed food. I think doing a food intolerance test, because we're all somewhat unique. Sometimes our digestion, like our ability to really utilize protein, it's not so much what you eat, it's what your body can utilize.
Mm,
But what if you're eating something and your body is having an inflammatory response to it that's so subtle, you just think it's a part of aging? Your doctor tells you it's a part of aging, right?
yeah.
So I think doing a food intolerance test is a really good thing to do every few years as we're aging. But giving up processed foods is so huge. If you start there and you're still not feeling 100%, I would look at food. But then there's testing that looks at like micronutrient deficiencies. And as women age, if you're taking some meds, there are meds that are notorious for depleting, our electrolytes. Think of PPIs, like something to prevent reflux or to limit reflux, and how many women have reflux.
Mm,
So, as women age, sometimes they get a little more padded in front and it pushes up. And it could be that, or it could be the food that they're eating. Well, those PPIs can actually um, they deplete your sodium, your chloride, your potassium, your magnesium. And so not having those nutrients can make you less energetic, maybe they make you feel like you have more mental fog. So I'm a big believer in testing, not guessing. You really want to know what's going on in your physiology, but if you think of a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, and your physiology is all the individual pieces, and you have a few of the pieces missing, your physiology is not going to work as well. And so I'm big on personalizing that way. And then, I also think, because it's a big ask to say to somebody, give up all processed food. Like my husband said to me the other day, if I make it at home, then it's not as processed. If I can make it at home and put together whole ingredients, it's not as processed. But if you're buying it in a store from a big company, it's highly processed. So, if you're not giving that right input, because you're eating too much processed food, then I really think coaching makes all the difference in the world. Some people walk into menopause, go on a diet to lose the 15 pounds they put on, and are back on track eating well. And other people, women have to have their wine to wind down from their teenagers and whatever it is, or maybe it's a cultural thing and it's the foods that are part of the culture. And sometimes you just need coaching to one by one break down the bad habits and replace them with good habits. Not everybody just cold turkey, can do it. Everybody's unique.
Especially, since we're on LinkedIn, for working women. As women, they're working 9 to 5, they're busy, they don't have time to cook. I think those women, they really need coaching because, that helps them with a guide that can help them as, they're dealing with that busy lifestyle.
Right.
And
And sometimes women need to know, like I'll know where people live. Okay, there's this restaurant near you that makes clean food, and I make suggestions like that. Or how do you exercise when you're working and you're out of the house 10 hours because of commuting? Well,
yeah,
you do exercise snacks, maybe you do some squats when you go to the bathroom, or you make sure that if you can close the door in your office, you do squats in there. Like, you can do different things throughout the day so you're not sitting all day. Take the stairs, park farther away from, the building you're going into, things of that nature. So I try to solve problems for people wherever they are. But, the other thing is also I have to walk the talk.
yeah,
And I can't ever, do you know how you say people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones? That's the statement, I'll use sometimes with my better half. And, but I really walk the thin line and make sure that I am doing more than I would ask of my patients.
mm, I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, if I can't do it, then, I mean, how many times do you hear this that, and your mother may have even told you this, is like you go to the doctor and they're obese and, they have a pack of cigarettes on the shelf behind you, and you're like, this is who's teaching me how to stay well?
Oh, that was a great transition because the first Ayurvedic, the first provider in general that joined our platform was an Ayurvedic specialist, a lady named Stacey Theodosin. And something that she said that really blew my mind is the fact that what these people are eating in these cancer clinics, I mean, they're eating food that you eat when you're in high school. They're
Right,
eating food out of a vending machine, and she mentioned that the food can keep you alive, but there's no energy in the food to
right.
actually sustain you and help you to fight that disease. And that's really the biggest problem. And that's why I believe that every single doctor in America, really around the world, should have a nutritionist on standby.
Right. Right, they should. Your doctor, instead of telling you you need to lose 10 pounds and you're going on a statin, if you don't lose the weight and lower your cholesterol, or you're going on, I don't know, metformin, if you don't lower your blood sugar and get off the Dunkin' Donuts. The truth is, if you just referred this person, you know, maybe that person with a nutritionist could wear a continuous glucose monitor
Yeah.
and notice how food really affects them. And sometimes that's a wake up call. There's a great test that I use for biological age testing. And what's really special about this company is, when I first got into the space of biological age testing, I didn't believe it. Kind of like, okay, you're testing methylation and another company is testing glycation, which is what happens to your hemoglobin A1C, your blood sugar. It's glycation, it's not good. And another person is looking at what's called doomed in place, which is, or pace rather, which is like out of a year, how much are you aging? Are you aging a year and a half for every year of your life? Or are you aging 75 or 85% of a year as you're aging?
Mm.
And this company, the first time I did their test, I was 10 years younger than my age, but they only did methylation. And then over the years, this is like literally 2022, they have now added the glycation, they've added the Dunedin paste, and they look at your blood genetically to tell you what, and also from a systems biology place. So, for instance, how's your heart health genetically now, today? How's your cognitive function today? How's your GI resilience today? And it's very actionable because then they say, we recommend plant forward, or we recommend Mediterranean, or we recommend focus on these four supplements. And people don't want to be aging faster than their chronological age. That's a motivation. That's a huge motivation,
Yeah.
you know? And I love a test like that. Like somehow people have to believe, and it's hard for a 20 or a 30-year-old to believe, but at some point when you start to see things change, you if you don't wake up, you're going to end up like one of those people who's in a wheelchair at 60.
Yeah. And I think people don't realize that what me being going in my 30s, I need to start now so that as I reach my 30 and 35 and 40, I am not breaking down. And a lot of people don't realize that the decisions that you make in your 20s regarding your nutrition affects the way that you live in your 30s. For example, a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month or two ago, I had really bad gut issues. I was getting constipation heavily, and then I was eating a lot of processed foods that was causing me diarrhea and bloody stool. And what I realized was it was too much processed foods, it was too much soybean oil, and also I started using this chia seeds so that
Uh-huh.
I could get more fiber
Right.
because my mom and we both struggle with constipation. So can you touch on what people could do and what tests they could do to help combat constipation and
So
other gut related issues?
constipation is a motility issue. But you're right, like especially if you're going back and forth between diarrhea and constipation, that's more likely IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. If you get bleeding, that's irritable bowel disease, IBD. Now, what do you need to find out? Well, and I had this conversation with somebody recently, like, there's all this talk on, social media about parasites, and they and all that, and do this parasite cleanse and whatever. And I kind of look at it and I go, well, there's the terrain theory.
Hmm.
And the terrain theory says your microbiome, it's diversity as well as it's the way the good, the bad, and the ugly live in community together. And if it's healthy because of the inputs, then we have greater diversity and we also have better communities. And we will tend to have better digestive health. So we can keep parasites and all sorts of things like that at bay if we nourish the terrain and if the good outweigh the bad. All of us probably had mononucleosis as a, teenager, right? I mean, everybody bumped into that.
Yeah.
Well, that lives in us, but it's sequestered. But as Even think of chickenpox becomes shingles. But people don't usually get shingles in their 20s or 30s. They get it when they're more vulnerable. Yet that's in our blood, in our gut.
Mm.
So why does it rear its ugly face? Is because when this 80-year-old person ends up in the hospital, they had a fall, let's say they're getting a replacement, their body is just at a vulnerable state. And then, boom. And I used to see this in home care all the time. You would never see shingles unless somebody came out of the hospital and had surgery, and it was an elderly person. But going back to you, that's part of gut health. That is, because these things live in our blood and live in our gut. But the best thing is to just eat real food. And if everything straightens out when you eat 90% real food, then you probably don't have a problem. You know, the way I grew up with a traditional Jewish kind of diet, you know, I would have said I probably went to the bathroom every day because I was a kid. But when I went to college, the meat was horrible. I could not chew the meat. It was like nothing like I ever experienced at home. So
Mm.
I worked for food service because I wanted a little extra cash in my pocket. And I remember this. I started eating more plant based, plant forward. And they had the best salads, and I would have to make some of the salads. So, I learned. And then, oh my God, I read Adele Davis, who wrote the best book about Diet for a Small Planet. But my bowel movements became much easier. And, like light bulbs go off. So if you listen to your body has an innate wisdom to heal or to change, unless you have celiac because of genetic, what's called the single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP SNP. But other than that, most people at some point wake up to go, okay, I get gassy and bloated when I eat this. I don't get gassy and bloated when I eat that.
Mm.
So part of understanding what it is for an individual, you could do it with a food log, or you could do a food intolerance test, or if you really had a problem where it didn't go away just eating real food or more real food, if it didn't go away, then I'd be doing, a stool sample.
Okay. So you did a study that's on our website at decentmed.org/nutrition. And in that study, actually, can you touch more on that study? Tell the audience a little bit about the study that you
So
did.
I was selling a weight loss plan when I first finished my functional medicine training. And I actually kept track of my patients, and they were coached. Part of this plan, it's an amazing plan. I still use it today. But the thing that was really so powerful was men would lose 35 to 45 pounds in 6 weeks, and women would lose 25 to 35 pounds in 6 weeks. And that's astronomical. And people drop their medicine and everything. But the thing that really made the difference, I think, was they came into the office for a weigh in every 2 weeks. They texted their body composition to us every day. They got cheered on, and they got corrected if they were doing something wrong, or they could ask a question. And this level of coaching, what I portray in the study, it's not really a study. What it is a tracking. It's a tracking. But what we employed in this plan was intermittent fasting and a very low calorie diet for 40 days, and then we finished with keto, and then we went into a cardio metabolic plan. But basically, we tracked all these people, and there was massive weight loss, but most importantly, there was muscle retention,
Mm.
and there was fat loss, and there was visceral fat loss, along with dropping of medications, whether it was more in just more the blood pressure and the blood sugar meds that people dropped. Sometimes the PPIs, because people lost their reflux. I mean, it was really when you like you'd see the success of each patient, but when you looked at the tracking of it, it was mind-boggling. And I think that the coaching is what really made the difference. The plan is amazing, but if somebody tried to do it on their own, it would be really hard. But the coaching makes all the difference in the world.
And now, years later, can you speak on, obviously without giving any names, but some client success utilizing some of these tests in conjunction with the coaching that you're doing now?
Well, I have people that are on my not yeah, on my website. I have testimonies, but on Instagram, I have some people talking about their gains. So I have one woman who got off her insulin. That was like amazing. But she went on keto. She didn't do this weight loss plan. She went on keto. But in about 3 weeks, her blood sugar normalized. And it was about 120 at night. And she said to me, should I take my insulin before dinner? And this was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:30. And I said, you need to call your doctor. That is not my decision. I
Right.
did not prescribe insulin. And believe it or not, she didn't. And she woke up in the morning having taken her insulin. And what happened was she woke up and her blood sugar was about 50. And she hadn't seen 50, you know, for many, many, many years. And she never looked back. But she now keeps her blood sugar between about 85 to about 140. Her hemoglobin A1C went from about 8.4 to 6.5. So she's still borderline diabetic, type 2, but that's a process. That'll come down the more she sticks with it. I worked with somebody who came to me with IBS, believe it or not, and she was put on SSRIs because she took care of her father-in-law and got very sad when he died. She really went into a state of depression, and it ruined her gut. It
Wow.
really, yeah. And we did genetic testing on her, and we looked at her like neurophysiological pathways. And I said to her, you're not methylating. Take this to your psychiatrist and see what they're willing to do to get you off of the meds. And we got her methylation support. And she checks in once a year with me. It's really amazing. Like she'll be checking in October, um, and she has never looked back at IBS. And she didn't realize because of how processed her diet was, she just didn't glue it together. She had no clue. And her son was a really good chef, and he was going to the Culinary Institute, and he would make desserts, and he shifted gears and started making gluten-free desserts. And you know
Wow.
she was she was like she just her life changed. Her life completely changed. I've had women who have never been able to lose weight and keep it off, who when they do my 3-month plan, they learn very deeply about themselves and their not so much psychological relationship with food, but their physiological relationship with food because of the way the plan is structured. And that's a transformation. And people don't look back. And I give them tips on what to do if they gain a few pounds or if they go on vacation, how to get back, you know. Um, I mean, At this point, while I'm really interested in the midlife to older life patients in terms of doing it well, um, I've worked with younger women who have PCOS. I've worked with people that have cognitive decline and used personalized nutrition as well as more of a keto diet to really improve their cognitive function.
So let's touch on that because I have a sister and she is in her 30s, early 30s. She's obese and she has PCOS.
Hmm.
And, our family doesn't know what to do. We've essentially kind of given up a little bit. So, what advice do you have for women that are in their 30s that are obese and have PCOS? How do you guide them through that process?
One of the hallmarks of PCOS is actually insulin resistance. So the first thing you have to tackle is the is that insulin resistance. When insulin goes up and when it can't get into the cells because of inflammation and being overweight, your insulin just keeps going up and up and up, and we store fat.
Mm,
And so we have to help those people A, lose weight, B, lower their insulin so that the fat can come off. And sometimes that can be just food, and sometimes supplements like berberine. You know, I have a great product called Unimate. They have a tea and a fiber, and that really helps with the insulin resistance. So I will use those supports to make it easier for people. The other thing, though, is to help with how the hormones are being metabolized through the liver.
mm.
Um, I'm going to segue to a story which will spell this out, but I had a woman once come to lose weight after she had breast cancer, had everything taken out. I wanted to test um, her pathways, her liver pathways, to see if she's breaking down estrogen before I put her on a diet, because I wanted to make sure that she would detoxify whatever was being held in the fat cells. And she wouldn't. But after she lost weight, we did that test and we found out she doesn't metabolize her estrogen. Well, if you're not metabolizing your estrogen, guess what? You're more inclined, to get that kind of condition like PCOS. So with someone like PCOS, like your sister, you really have to test. You have to look at their liver enzymes and how they're metabolizing estrogen.
Interesting.
And so
So,
there's supplements like DIM, and this is another one. There's a couple of really good supplements that will support the breakdown of estrogen, which I would give in addition to helping with diet. And women like that have to really stick to it, because at some point, like your sister's going to want to, is she married?
no, no, not
Yeah.
married, single.
At some point, she's going to want to get married. She's going to want to have kids, and it's hard to get pregnant when you have PCOS. So
Yeah.
you want to kind of solve these problems because these are the women that would end up on IVF treatment.
Yeah. So, what do you say to the women that have given up? I feel like a lot of women that have PCOS sometimes they just rely to the fact of, oh, I've given up. Or my other question to that is, do these women have a higher chance of miscarriage?
I think they have a harder time of not getting pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and doctors are going to, in the traditional world, are going to focus on the blood sugar,
Mhm.
which is important. I don't think that's wrong. I just think you have to work on the blood sugar, the diet, the exercise, and you also have to work on the hormones.
definitely.
Yeah.
So how do people manage their blood sugar in an efficient way?
Well, one of the things I said earlier was wearing a CGM is very powerful. I during the tail end of COVID, I started a lose the 19 pounds COVID group, and I was doing Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet, and about 12 people joined my group from people who'd worked with me in the past because everybody was homebound, so they
Yeah.
put on weight. And a company reached out to me that has a platform so that you can log what you're eating. And then, did you write that or somebody else wrote? Oh,
Yeah,
somebody.
somebody in the chat wrote
Oh,
someone
nice.
with
Yes,
PCOS
they
freeze
do.
their eggs.
Yes, they do. I've heard that too. But what I was going to say is somebody reached out with from a company with that has a CGM and a platform where you could take a picture of what you're eating and come back later and describe it, and you could have your favorite meals. But I remember my husband had a Manhattan and he saw his blood sugar go to like 250, and he went, oh my god, and he doesn't drink Manhattans that often anymore. But you begin to learn as we age that we should probably not have fruit alone because it could raise our blood sugar. And since we're more sensitive as we age, we should have that fruit either, like, if we're going to blend a smoothie, it's with protein, it's with fat. And there are other things that slow the digestion. I remember I was making, it was in August, and like the best honeydews are around in August. And I was cutting it up to put coconut yogurt on it, which is very fat forward. And I was doing it strategically, but the honeydew was so good. And later I found out that while I ate maybe 4 or 5 pieces of honeydew, I don't mean slices, but pieces, I was cutting them into pieces, my blood sugar was going up and it went up to like 160.
Mm.
So the next day I made sure I had the coconut yogurt with it, and I did not have that rise. I went up to like 120 and then it had a gentle slope and came down. So, a real eye opener to me that if I'm going to include my, you know, this person knows you.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm going to include blueberries or something like that, I'm going to put it with yogurt, and I'll put protein powder, Greek yogurt, and I'll put protein powder in there to boost that. And maybe I'll, put in some granola that I make so it doesn't have sugar in it, or oats, and I put that on top. And then I know I don't have to worry about my blood sugar.
It's funny you mention that because what I found, because I'll try to eat like a banana in the morning, and I found that when I pair it with an egg, like you mentioned, it does a better job. Not only at sustaining me, because what I do is my dad put me on intermittent fasting, so I typically eat at about 11 or 12.
Right?
I do one meal a day,
Oh,
right?
really?
Or
Okay.
two meals that day.
2 meals.
So
Okay.
that breakfast, lunchtime, and then dinner. And I found that if I just eat a banana, I'm starving by the time dinner comes.
Right. Yeah, that's not enough food. And we have, you're younger, so, and you're already thin, but when we intermittent fast, we lower inflammation as well.
Mm.
It just lowers all the inflammation in our body. And we need periods of time. Like if you just stop eating by 6 or 7 and you don't eat till 8, that's probably sufficient. And you probably at your age want to mix it up because, there is a lot of research about lowered calorie consumption and aging better. This
Mm.
study years ago, I learned it in college, so that's a lot of years ago. And they did a study about that recently, and it is still holding true. But, I think the other problem we run into is if you're really only eating one meal a day, you might not be getting enough protein,
Yeah.
you may not be getting enough micronutrients. 2 meals a day, you have a better shot at it, you know, but you should cover your bases, and maybe mix it up. Mixing it up, that way the body doesn't get used to lower calories. Like some women eat low calories and they never increase their calories, and then they become weight loss resistant when their hormones change, or
Mm,
they get thyroid dysfunction.
wow. So, as this comment mentioned from Christiana, I like avocado because in what I found from an Ayurvedic specialist is that food needs to be seasonal, right? You should eat seasonally if you can.
Right.
So to eat vegan, Christiana, for example, she's in the UK. So for her to eat vegan, that might be a little bit more challenging because seasonally it's harder to get. Versus here in Mexico, eating vegan is simple because the food grows on the trees. But if
Right.
I'm in Alaska or my parents in New Jersey, it's a little bit more challenging to
Yep.
eat seasonally. So I really like avocado as my protein supplement, but I was vegan for a little bit as
Well,
well.
avocado doesn't have protein.
It doesn't.
No, it's fat forward. It's
Oh,
fiber.
wow.
It's fiber. It's got lots of vitamins and minerals in it, but it's not a protein. But if you have your eggs with avocado and then maybe do your banana after, and maybe just half a banana, not a whole banana, and maybe rotate, because honestly, banana doesn't it doesn't give you, like, it gives you potassium, but blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, they're rich in polyphenols, and that's what that study that we were talking about at the very beginning,
Yeah.
that's what's really making the difference. Is a diet high in polyphenols makes a huge difference in your health overall as you're aging.
This is my mom does actually. That's funny. Every day she has a smoothie, blueberries, um, whey or vegan protein, and strawberries every day,
Nice.
and it helps her a lot because and you're
Right,
probably
so she
right.
could put into that like half an avocado if she would like that, and should put in leafy greens. When
Okay.
I make a smoothie, I will put in frozen blueberries. I'll put in, power greens, so they're dark, leafy. They're very, very cleansing. And I'll throw in some hemp seed, chia seed, and flax seed, but it's already
Yeah.
ground up. But you got to ground that up. Do not eat them without either soaking or grinding them. Do you know that?
Yeah, I found that with these is if I even if I wait like three minutes, it tastes like terrible. You have to really let it soak and sit for at least five,
Right,
or
and you
else
can
it's
make
almost
desserts with
inedible.
that. You can make really nice desserts with that. You can
Oh
add
wow.
vanilla and put cacao in.
Huh. I didn't
Yeah,
know that. Wow.
yeah,
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 that
yeah. You
sounds
can
good.
look up chia pudding online, and you'll find some great recipes.
Huh.
But 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 your berries are phenomenal. Somebody is saying they're great antioxidant. They're antioxidants and they're polyphenol rich. So, and everybody's on a GLP-1 agonist to help them lose weight, but your berries, your richly covered, your greens, they are all polyphenols, which are GLP-1 agonists.
Interesting.
Yep.
By the way, for everyone, this is Lori's website. Definitely check it out, nutrifyyourlife.com. Lori is very skilled in helping women lower their blood sugar. So, with the antioxidants, what are some great what are some great antioxidants? I know that we touched on berries. What are some other ones that you like to incorporate in some of your clients' diets?
So let's step back a second so people understand something science wise. And I love talking about this. So when we were all in like 10th or 11th grade, you saw the electron that pairs with another electron in another molecule, and they're free radicals. And
Yeah.
what happens is when we take an antioxidant, it squelches that, it binds with it, so there's no more negative electrical charge. But Here's the thing, we live moving back and forth between pro-oxidation and having antioxidants. So it's not good to always be in an antioxidant rich state. We need to be on the other side of the equation as well. So when we exercise, for example, we have oxidative stress, and that's the kind of stress that teaches our body to pull in the antioxidants. And so we call it hormetic, meaning like if it doesn't kill you, the stress that doesn't kill you is good for you. Well, it teaches the body, like things happen in our physiology in an oxidative stress physiology, but also in an antioxidant physiology. But most of life is pro-oxidative stress. So what the foods we link to, honestly, the foods that we're going to link to are every single berry, every like sweet potato, um, and I would say nuts and seeds are phenomenal. Like everything from the plant kingdom. And it's the colors. So, red cabbage. Think of red cabbage. Think of a red pepper. Think of a yellow or an orange pepper. When I make a stir fry at night, not every night, but I do a lot of nights, I will take broccoli. I'll take onion, garlic. I'll take zucchini, and then I'll throw in red pepper, and then I'll do mushrooms. Those are your white colors. And these are all great antioxidant rich foods. You do not get antioxidants in dairy or things that have eyes.
So, this is Lori Graham. Lori Graham is our first nutritionist on the platform, and today we're spotlighting her expertise. She is a functional nutritionist. She helps women to lower their blood sugar. Any questions for Lori?
I just joined. That's why I was saying to you, where's the link? And well done for doing your first event. That's what I say.
Oh, sorry.
Great to meet you,
Yeah,
Lori.
we definitely had some issues with this one.
Yes. Now, no, there's always a first, my friend, and we will learn. I promise you. We'll start somewhere.
I love your title, What We Learned from COVID. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the title of my book. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I have a group book on that title. So 10 people from across the world sharing the lessons we learned, how we survived. So it's so good. It's so good. Now, I love what you're saying. So I have discovered vegetables recently from, I guess, my nutrition friends. So as a Lisa tends to talk about, I need to have 3 different colors on my plate. So when you talk about broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, those are my 3 go-tos.
That's great.
I would add other tomatoes, mushrooms sometimes. So I do try. Yeah, and I just try to add. Maybe eat less carbs, because otherwise I'll fill my plate with rice. Otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think carbs. A nice way to do carbs is like if you have a salad, take a tablespoon or 2 of quinoa. And I don't mean like a serving tablespoon. I mean like a soup spoon, 2 of those, you accent your food with carbs. And that way you don't have to be so restrictive.
No, for sure. Quinoa, I can't even pronounce it, let alone, I haven't touched it. I know what I've seen it.
No, yeah, it's delicious. It's actually really nice.
Sweet potatoes to deal with, right? I love my potatoes. I love giant potatoes.
I love sweet potatoes. I love purple tip potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. Do you garden at all?
No, we used to. So no, I guess throughout my life, all through my life, I have gardened every so often. Right. I grew up in Nigeria, and there you tend to have your own farm. You tend to have your own plot of land to plant stuff, and we tend to plant mainly corn, maize, I suppose, call it that. But right. In my adulthood, I came across. We had a corner plot, a corner house. So there's quite a decent garden there, and I said, no, we grew strawberries. So like, I like growing carrots because they actually do grow. Now tomatoes I tend to like growing as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, we have we had a bumper crop of cucumbers, so I pickled them. We've had spaghetti squash. It's coming out of my ears, but I love it. Um,
It's
oh,
not
listen,
it's something like you find a way to have enough.
yeah, no, I know. We have Japanese eggplant, so I was buying shiitake mushrooms and making nice stir fries. And let's see, what else did we grow? A lot of zucchini and wildflowers. We don't need those.
My frustration now is that we haven't got a big enough garden to grow stuff, so we tend to grow stuff in pots. And let's say take strawberries as an example. You might get 10 or 12, and you think that's
You
not
know what's
enough.
easy to do indoors? You can sprout indoors.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does
You
that mean?
could take like mung beans. You could take alfalfa seeds. You could do radish seeds, and I would take like a bowl jar. You know that the ones that are about 16 ounces, and
Mm,
I put mesh over it. So first I put the seeds in and I soak them in water overnight. So I'll start that at night. And in the morning, I'll pour off the water, I rinse it out, and I leave them on the counter. I leave them kind of on an angle upside down, and the water drains out. And 3 or 4 days later, they are sprouts.
mm.
And
Ready
that,
to go outside, I suppose. Ready to go into a bigger pot.
say that again?
They're ready to go into a bigger pot.
They're better. They're great. You wouldn't want to cook them. You'd want to throw them on top of a sandwich, or you'd want to put them in a salad. But they are living
Mm,
because they're sprouted, and that's the divine energy. When something's living, all the nutrition is broken down and is extraordinarily bioavailable.
mm.
So it never hurts anybody's stomach. You know.
Yeah, no, there's something we're growing indoors these days. Chili peppers.
Yeah, we have chili peppers too.
They're green and they go red, and that's a new addition in the last couple of months. But the plant just keeps giving. That's what I
Yes,
find really
it
amazing.
does.
I pick them off and they seem to just grow back, and there's always more growing, more getting bigger. You're like, wow, that's quite
Right, right, right. Oh, that's great. Where do you live now?
southwest of England. And the person in the comment is laughing at me. If
Oh,
I'm in
wow.
planting, it's not the planting space. What happened because of our last property? That's the big garden, the corner plot. As I mentioned, my wife got rather tired of mowing the lawn, so she's like, I don't want a garden. So as soon as we got here, she concreted the whole lot. So that took away, that took away, the chance to grow anything that we normally would do, right? Yeah,
Aw.
yeah. Well, I think we have to find ways to grow stuff indoors, in adapted gardens. I think these days.
Yeah, and you know what? There are grow lights. So even if you had, we do this, we start like around February, March. My husband mostly, I don't do this. He does it. This is his passion. But we have those shelves that stack,
Mm,
and he had lights on the bottom of the shelf above, and then and then he had a warming mat, and then he planted his seedlings. He would start them sprouting them in the top of our freezer refrigerator unit because that's where the motor is, so it's warm. And
mm,
Wow.
so they would warm up, they'd sprout, and then he plants them in soil, and he grows them so that, especially in Connecticut, like we're further north. So we probably plant late May, early June. We wait until the ground is warmer.
mm.
But you could grow that stuff indoors. They have those towers that grow greens. You've seen
Mm.
those, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they're quite popular now, right?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a will more than anything else, isn't it? It's a will to actually grow stuff. That's what we need, right?
Right. You can have a greenhouse, right?
Yeah. It's
My
true.
dad, he's trying to get into gardening himself, and they're also up north, like Lori's up north as well. So I'm glad that your husband has found that because, for my dad, he's still getting used to being up north. He's from Florida. So going from Florida to New Jersey, that's quite a culture shock.
That is.
So, he's still trying to get used to, the lifestyle and everything. And when he was in Florida, he really liked gardening. But as you mentioned, with the seasons of New Jersey or even where you are, that it's very, it's hit or miss because the seasons are so different. But with up north, my question for you, with them also being from the UK, is what are some things nutritionally that people can do as we approach fall and obviously flu season?
So, one thing that we really need to be mindful of is our vitamin D levels. And, like I am outdoors in the summer and I can basically back off on taking supplemental vitamin D. But in the fall and in the winter, the angle of the sun is already changing. But you need to get your vitamin D levels checked because vitamin D is so essential for us, for our bone health, for our immune system, for our cognitive function. But I would also, honestly, I think the other thing that shifts around is think about soups that you would like because as the weather gets colder, you might enjoy some lentil soups or things of that nature that you can throw other polyphenol rich foods in, like you could throw, cube sweet potatoes in, you could do acorn squash thing, and that's the seasonal thing also, because that is what comes out. There's also wonderful Jamaican pumpkin, I think it's called, which is delicious. They make Jamaican pumpkin soup. I've made that and I love that. So I lean into soups and then I can tolerate a salad with it. You know what I mean? But Sam, you were talking about being vegan,
Yeah.
and I think one of the challenges when people are vegan is your B12 can come down. You need to supplement that, but you need to be aware of protein and your needs for protein. So when you do your blood test, you want to make sure you're in range. If you're not in range, you need to eat more protein. Like
Mhm.
not everybody's really cut out to be a vegan unless somebody's really like an animal activist. Um, I would say you could always use protein powders, but not everybody needs to use protein powders either. You know what I mean? But a vegan might.
It's funny you mentioned a vegan diet because, for athletes, you see that vegan isn't the best move. Plant based is really well. You look at, Tom Brady, who's
Mhm.
widely considered the GOAT of NFL. He eats a mainly plant based diet, but he still were to eat some meat. And
Right.
you look at some athletes who went full vegan, whether it's Nate Diaz in the fight world or, I think Serena Williams is also a vegan. So what I've seen with that is when you have that protein deficiency, their performance tends to drop when it
They
comes
can,
to.
right. But we've also seen, who was it? Edwin Moses, I think, the shot putter. He was a vegan and he was a big guy. So,
Wow.
but we are all different. And that's the thing that's one of the reasons why I love functional medicine is you can hang your hat on N of one when you test and you know what the treatment should be. You can't do something because a big study was done. Because you may be that outlier,
Yeah.
outlier, as they would say. You don't know, so test. I think everybody should test. When you're younger, you don't think about it because you might wake up a little foggy in the morning and you think, well, I had alcohol last night. But listen, test, don't guess.
I like that, everybody. Test, don't guess. That right there is so true. And you're right. And I think enough people just guess. And especially in the age of AI, they just run to ChatGPT and say, AI, this is my issues, and help me figure out my problem. And they don't do the testing like they should. Because that's the issue with AI. Is
Right.
that because AI is such a high IQ tool, people think that it's just the end all be all cure for everything. And that's not the case.
But I bet AI, if somebody had a blood test and they put their results in,
Mhm.
I bet AI has the capacity to give some solid recommendations. And I dare say, especially as women age, because they precipitously lose estrogen, we need to build muscle. And so we need our protein.
Mhm.
And I still eat largely plant, I do. But like my body does well with whey protein, but I'll also eat the salmon and I'll eat the sable, the wild fish. We need that, and we need our omega-3 we need our 6-to-3 ratio. That's the way the ratio is read. We need to be like 2-to-1, 3-to-1, omega-6 to 3, because if not, our body's going to be inflamed.
Mhm.
And most first world countries, they're like 25-to-1 because of the processed food, because we're taking in so many omega 6s.
Mm.
And it's not just omega 6, because there's omega 6 that's in our nuts and seeds, and we need those, but
Yep.
we need them in balance. And when we eat processed food, guarantee you it's not organic expeller pressed omega 6.
Mm.
It is the mass produced kind. That's why it's better to make bars and granola at home.
Homemade if you can, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Any questions for Lori? Any thoughts?
No, I think I have this plan that when my body starts giving up or starts playing up, it was something terminal like cancer or something drastic like diabetes. I think my plans to turn to plant based mainly. So a friend of mine wrote a book, Kelly Gilbert, how plants saved my life. And she's essentially saying go plant based and you can almost reverse any condition.
Well, I would also to you say do do an in so before you came on, one of the things I was talking about was, if you imagine a jigsaw puzzle and you have that's your physiology and some pieces of the puzzle are out. Well, you may not be able to convert. I'm going to just give you some science here, but folic acid into methylfolate, which is the bioavailable form. Unless you're testing, you don't have a clue.
Mm.
Now, I know cancer is the second biggest killer in first world countries, but I don't ever live with the consciousness that I'm ever going to get cancer.
Mm.
I don't live with that conscious. That's just not part of my, when my doctor wanted to do a stool sample, I almost, not a stool sample, or colonoscopy. I'm like, the stuff you got to drink will give you the cancer. like, thank God for Cologuard. It's called Cologuard. You do a little stool sample and they look for DNA fragments. That's fine, thank you. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't live with the consciousness that I'm going to get cancer, but I'm also organic, wild.
Mm.
You know, I don't do grains.
Real
I
food.
drink
Real food.
real food,
Mm.
real food. It's not in my consciousness. I am more concerned about heart disease because that inflammation goes up as we age. So what do we do to bring it down? We eat. We take fish oil to lower it. We continue to eat real food. We eat wild salmon, wild sable. We eat herring in a jar, organic wild. We do the right thing.
So how do you help people?
Depends what their goals are. But if you said to me, I want to have optimal health,
Mm,
probably the first thing I would do, there's a great company that does genetics in a systems biology perspective, which is functional medicine. So it'll look at your physiology, like the genetics of your physiology in terms of cardiovascular health, in
mm,
terms of GI health, in terms of your cognitive, your neuromuscular abilities. And then what's really nice is the report is so user friendly that I need to take this supplement because my body doesn't convert it, or I need to exercise this way because my body burns fat that way. But or I need more saturated fat and less polyunsaturated fat. Genetically. But then the other thing I would do for optimizing health is I would do something called the NutriEval, which looks at all your vitamins, all your minerals, all your essential fatty acids. So it does go into that omega 6 to 3 ratio. It looks at mercury, lead, arsenic, and one other. I'm on the spot now, so I can't say it. But it looks at these, heavy metals that can be a toxic load. Okay. And you want to detox from these. So it gives you a lot of information. But when you're looking at what somebody's micronutrient status is, that's kind of telling you that the way they're eating, which is in the imprinting of, like, the genetics give you this, it's the hardwiring. And
mm,
then you're imprinting onto that your diet and your exercise, and then your blood test and your analysis that goes into this report says this is what my body does with it.
mm,
And so it's that beautiful interplay between the hard drive and the soft drive.
mm. I suppose the triggers. This is probably another way. You call it soft drive. The things that might trigger your hardwiring to activate, to
Right.
suddenly become inflamed or become corrupted somehow, right? No.
You might have, but you wouldn't see in this kind of test, you wouldn't see, oh, you're going to die from heart disease, or you're going to, no, it's more like your nutrients conversion into bioavailable forms, or how much protein you might need, or how well you recover from exercise. Those are a few things. Whether you're more inclined to have microbiome issues. So our genes are only part of the equation. We don't our genes do not dictate, but how we eat and stress and how we sleep and how we exercise, that impacts
Mm.
the genome.
Yeah. That makes good sense. So do you advise us on what to eat? So you get the test done.
When you get the test done, you will have a prescription when you get both those tests done, because then I combine that information so that you get something that says, okay, you should eat a keto diet maybe, or you should eat a Mediterranean diet. Whatever
Okay.
kind of diet you do, you got to give up processed foods. I
Mm,
mean, that's a no-brainer, but or you've got to be eating far less of it once in a while,
mm, mm.
you know? Mercury, lead, and arsenic, and cadmium is the other one.
Mm,
So this NutriEval actually tests cadmium as well. And I remember when I did the test, more recently, I ended up having mercury, and I went on an in-depth protocol. And I said, "Where am I getting mercury?" Well, guess what? I had mercury in my teeth growing up.
Mm, mm,
Right?
mm.
That stopped at about 25 or so because things changed and we understood a little bit more. So, as cavities needed to be fixed, I got porcelain, but I'm sure I had some stay in my tissues. But the other
Mm.
thing is our air. We're first world country, right? Our air, we're getting impacted. Our soil, even in my garden, my soil gets these chemicals. You want to have chocolate nowadays, you got to research which kind doesn't have cadmium.
Or which one's real chocolate? I mean, a
Or
lot of chocolate is not even real.
well, I go for the real, but even the real has, lead and cadmium. Like you have,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. EWG, by the way, for your listeners, Environmental Workers Group, just go online and sign up. Their emails are great, and you get these guides for like what's going on today in your world, you know, because it changes. One year it could be heavier with one toxin than another, you know?
It's funny you mention that because here in Mexico, I've gotten to the point where I don't even really like the American food anymore. I just want to go to the local stands
Yeah.
because the local stand, I mean, it tastes better anyway, but they are just, it's cleaner. They're picking the fruit and they're getting the fruit. And, with the foods from, the indoor restaurants, a lot of times it's American foods. So there might be American seed oils. They're getting it from Costco or Walmart, so yeah, it's horrible. And
You have to ask, Sam, you have to ask. When we went to an Indian restaurant, we stayed overnight in New London, Connecticut, because we were going across the Sound to Block Island. And my husband picked out this Indian restaurant because he said, this will be good for you because you'll get more vegetables. So I asked the guy, "What kind of oil do you use?" He said, "Canola oil." And I'm like, "I don't want canola oil."
yeah, for
I said, "Could you cook in ghee?" And he said, "Yes, I could cook in ghee."
wow.
Made my dish in ghee. Now, you don't know if you don't ask, but you're
Mm.
paying for the food. Ask.
Mm.
And by the
No,
way,
I think what you're saying, if we don't know,
yeah,
I've never heard of that type of oil, let alone to ask for it. I'm saying awareness is after battle, right?
I'll
right.
tell them I'm allergic. That's what I tend to do. Is I'll say, "Hey, I'm allergic to seed oil. I can't eat it. I'll die," and that's when they'll, prioritize it for me if they can.
Shouldn't have to say, "I choose not to eat it." Come from
Yeah, for real, exactly.
But even, when you're going to these places on the street, you really should ask them too, what kind of oils are they using?
Mhm.
Mm. Oh,
Because
it makes
I'm
perfect
sure they're
sense.
using seed oil.
Yeah, well, if I'm eating tacos, typically you're not going to have that with seed oil. I don't think.
Well, the mixture that they make is going to be cooked in oil because the onion and the garlic or whatever they're seasoning with
Mm.
comes out. Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
That's a good point. You're right. You're right.
Mm.
yep. Ask or test, don't guess.
I like that. Test, don't guess. And any before you were in here, Lori, and I don't know if Christiana was here for that either, but Lori was speaking about an intermittent fasting diet that she did back when she was in school, and how it led to a very little change in muscle or water, but 20% change in visceral fat. 14% change in and I think body fat or different kinds of fats, but
Distal fat, yeah.
so that's the biggest thing that I found. And even when she spoke earlier about the study that she did with a former client who now is off her blood sugar or off her diabetes medication,
Hmm.
because utilizing these protocols, a lot of people don't want to coach because they don't like that word. I don't really like that word either, so I don't like to call Lori a coach. There's a difference between a health coach and a nutritionist. And I like to see Lori as a nutritionist because she is tailoring everything towards the function. That's why it's called functional medicine, towards you functioning efficiently. Nothing against health coaches. I got a health coach on the platform. We love health coaches, but
They're necessary. They do the
Hmm.
day-to-day work.
Yeah.
yeah. So then they work. They should work in conjunction. you know. But what I like about Lori is that, there was a guy in here before that asked that in our first live, his name was Calm, and he said that the number one thing I look for when it comes to holistic medicine is the evidence, the data, the
Hmm.
studies. And that's why, Lori is keen on, and I am as well, using the test and having the test guide everything that you do. Everyone has an opinion, but the numbers don't lie. So she can utilize the numbers to help you in curating different kinds of diet plans and nutritional plans in order for the best functional health. Because, when I first went into this, I thought everyone needs to be vegan. Vegan is the end all be all. You all got to be vegan. And what I found is, and Lori helped me to realize this, women specifically, it's harder for women to eat a vegan diet as they age. They'll lose, muscle. It leads to a lot more disease. Osteopathic,
Osteoporosis,
yeah,
yeah.
osteoporosis, because the bones need that, need the protein. Yes, you can get protein from other sources like pumpkin seeds and different sources, but like Lori said, it's
There's something
better.
to say. I once had a patient, you're going to like this, had a patient who wanted to eat more vegan, not exclusively, but we counted the protein in a salad. And surprise, surprise, get some organic can and put like half a can or maybe a quarter of a can on your salad, and you now have 10 grams of protein. I didn't even know that. Like
Wow.
corn to me is a starch. Pumpkin seeds added 18 grams. Your tomatoes have a little bit. Your dark green leafies have a little bit. And like by the time we made this salad vegan, we had 40 grams of protein.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's probably more than what I'm gonna eat tonight for dinner. And I got a nice piece of chicken and some rice and a little bit of veggies. Probably more than that.
Right.
And that's the misconception I found too with the American standard diet is they think, oh, you need to eat a bunch of, dairy products and a bunch of protein from meat. And the reality is that you can get a lot better sources from a vegan diet
Right.
regarding protein.
Right. Right. And we can include it into, as we age, we probably need to eat a little bit less saturated fat. Like, I don't think the carnivore diet was meant for people in their 60s and 70s. We're fighting an uphill battle to fight the inflammation that is one of the pillars of aging. And so, if you really look at the therapeutic value of food, then you choose food that fights inflammation. You choose foods that fight oxidative stress, you know? So things change with every, I'll say every decade, but it could be every 3 or 4 years, things change, you know?
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
Sam, you know me, I'm like deeply committed to exercise. This morning, my husband and I rode 22 miles. Sometimes we'll ride 28 miles, but I do something every day, and I do yoga 3 times a week, and I wear a weighted vest, and when we walk our dog in the morning. And, there are many things we have to take care of as women as we age.
And to your point, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I found in my body is just how you mentioned how protein should be paired with veggies, I found that exercise should be paired with protein because I found that when I eat protein, like for example, I had a burger this weekend and it caused me constipation until I went on about a half a mile walk, came back, and then I was fine. So what I found is if you don't pair the protein with exercise, then the protein is terrible. You have to have those things in conjunction. And can you touch more on that, Lori?
So, yeah, I can actually. So, one of the interesting things about protein, doesn't matter when during the day you have it. There's something called the amino acid pool, and that means that when you string together the days of a week and you have, let's say, 100 grams of protein every single day, at some point it's going to come out in the wash. You know what I mean? And the research does not say you should do your protein after you eat or you should do your protein before you eat. Your protein before you exercise. Sorry, you should, the research doesn't say that. The research says that your ability to build muscle, like after weightlifting, is good within the first 2 hours if you're taking a protein shake. But overall, in terms of meeting your protein needs from an overall health perspective, it really doesn't matter when you eat it. But what you're saying is valuable for you.
Mm.
So obviously, if you had that hamburger with a big salad, you might have gone to the bathroom before the walk. But
Yeah,
listen, I used to run in the morning for many years before work, and I'd have to go to the bathroom as soon as I walked in the house.
yeah.
So that massage to your stomach as you're breathing, I think, is part of what does it.
Mm.
Interesting. Any thoughts?
No, so there's much to learn, and there's always much to learn, right?
Definitely.
And it's good to have an expert, and otherwise, like you say, we're guessing. And maybe I don't know whether our systems can cope with the testing bit. It seems like the healthcare in the US, I know you pay good money, and say in the UK we don't pay. It's free. We're taxed. But I think it's a struggle to get the healthcare professionals that we need these days.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do know is that IFM has training for licensed healthcare professionals across the globe. And so if you were to look for a functional medicine practitioner
Mm.
in, England, you would find one. I'm
Yeah,
99.9% sure. Yeah. Whether or not they're whether or not they work in the private or in the insurance
yeah,
market, I don't know.
yeah. Yes, well, we have many people go private these days, because of the delays and the
Right, but
lack.
there are some good hearts out there that probably will do it under insurance or maybe defray some of the cost with insurance or at least allow you to get blood tests through insurance. So, you have to do a little bit of legwork.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It certainly looks like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know they were doing trainings. When I was training, they had just started the European training and even in South America. Not in South America, South
Mm,
Africa. South Africa, they did training. They're all over the world now.
mm. And I say Christian says we do have them. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I
I guess
believe.
I think the bit I was questioning is almost marrying. the holistic for the functional expert with the medical system?
Well, Sam knows I did this, but I worked for a hospital. I helped a hospital set up a functional medicine department.
Mm.
And the first thing I will tell you was they hired, so I knew the CEO, and he had his daughter had some type of eczema or something, and she healed through using a functional medicine practitioner. So when he heard about me through a health coach I worked with doing weight loss, he said, I have to meet that woman.
Mm.
And they offered me the job to be the coordinator. Well, I wasn't a doctor. So they hired doctors that were wannabes, that weren't certified in functional medicine. So I thought, oh, okay, I can be the bridge while they do their training, you know? And so I set up, you need this lab company, that lab company, that lab company, that lab company, and everything had to go through pharmacy. And then ordering supplements. We found out that a functional medicine cardiologist just did everything like the hospital didn't know.
Mm.
She had an account. It was her private account. She sold supplements in the office. She didn't do it the way the hospital would have you do it.
Mm.
But honestly, I was seen as a threat to the doctors, and that's not usually the way functional medicine doctors are. They usually really like having a nutritionist who will do some of the legwork that they won't do.
Yeah.
Right. But when one of the doctors finished his certification, I remember saying to him, or actually, he just finished his very first course. And I said to him, so Jonas, how'd you like the GI module? And he said to me, I felt like I was drinking from a hose. You know, when you turn on a hose and you're like drowned? That's
Mm.
what it's like. You take a doctor that has learned a pill for an ill, and then you give them tools to understand labs that will address somebody's physiology so that the blood test looks normal. You
Mm.
doctors, they don't even know when doctors come out of functional medicine training, they don't know how to, they do not know how to integrate it into their work because it
Mm.
doesn't fit in a 10-minute visit.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it was pretty dicey. It was, it was pretty dicey in terms of like what I knew versus what they knew. And they were doctors, but I knew more about physiology than they did
Yeah.
until they trained.
Well, yeah, that makes good sense. My wife's a nurse, and I guess junior doctors especially don't know much when they start off.
Right.
It takes many years for them to actually develop the knowledge, just the basic knowledge, to be anywhere even close to a nurse.
Well, you should tell your wife about IFM because you could do their training now. They do live things, but they went remote during COVID,
Mm.
but you can still do the training remotely.
Yeah, I'll mention it to her for
And you
sure.
would have your functional medicine practitioner in-house.
I laugh because like, I've got a 16-year-old son, and he's like, "You need to go to the doctors more." I'm like, "Why? I have a nurse."
Right, right, right,
Why
right,
do- yeah. And then I'll talk to her about it for sure. So I'll mention it to her.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And that's why we made this platform, because we want providers to work with each other. For example, if someone has, PTSD, right? Those, and they can go to a hypnotherapist. Well, that can work in conjunction with an acupuncturist that can help with the vagus nerve.
Right,
Or if someone works, naturopath can work alongside Lori, or an herbalist can work alongside Lori.
right.
Because at the end of the day, a bimodal approach is better than a unimodal approach.
No, you're right. I had a woman come into my office yesterday, and she has struggled with um, she struggled with depression and anxiety. I recommended her to a functional medicine psychiatrist who got her off her meds. But now I'm thinking she's starting to feel her feelings from a trauma that happened to her, which is good. So I recommended her, talk about working, making meaningful referrals. So I referred her to a woman who does microdosing. And so, I said, look, why don't we just try to soften this experience for you? You've got to somehow transmute the feelings. You have to get it out of your physiology. You have to get it through your physiology, so to say. It's energy that has to move. But, it wasn't that a diet was going to help her. It was, I needed, I have people around me that I can recommend to,
Mm,
so yeah.
it's good to have the network and to know the people that, as Sam's saying, that can work together to
Right.
provide a comprehensive solution, I suppose.
Right, right, and
Treatment.
you just have to know when it's outside your bailiwick,
Mm.
to say, I need another pair of hands on this, you
Mm.
know?
That's true.
Definitely. And if for example, at decentmed.org/PTSD, with Lori's point about microdosing, is that we did a documentary earlier this year with a woman. She is a shaman and a healer. Her name's Dr. Shelley Prasad. Definitely check out the documentary or visit her website at soulwarriorsretreat.com. And there was a man, and he had PTSD. He was a former Israeli soldier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he came in to, we flew him out, and they did a somatic therapy retreat with him mixed with psychedelic medicine. The first day he did somatic yoga. I actually did it with them. I still practice some somatic yoga. I probably should do more. I apologize, Shelly. Um, but he did somatic therapy mixed with cannabis as well. And then the second day, he did what's called combo mixed with somatic therapy and rapé. The third day, he did the same thing, and then the final day, he did bufo, and it changed his life. He actually ended up apologizing to Palestine, calling for the end of the war, and it was just a great experience. The moment I'll never forget in that experience was, we drove to a waterfall. It's beautiful scenery. It was like something out of a movie, and it's crazy to see it in a spot like where we were down in Latin America. And he went, and we go up this mountain, and he does the bufo, and at first he falls back and he starts crying, like bawling tears, like almost like he just found out that he lost a family member that he truly loved. And then about 90 seconds later, he starts laughing, like a jester laugh or a joker laugh. And it's crazy to see um, the emotional cycle, the roller coaster of emotion, and how he spoke on the experience in the documentary, and he spoke on how it changed his life, and how
Wow.
that UFO experience was the most transformative experience. And then as far as PTSD, when it comes to women, that a lot of women don't realize or talk about is when it comes to miscarriages. I mean,
Yep.
I think statistically, it's 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage or experience a miscarriage at some point in their life. And working alongside a miscarriage coach, a great coach is Christiana T. Johnson. She's a miscarriage coach that helps women along that process. And
Hmm.
working with someone like Lori, where Lori can help with the nutrition and help with that process, because that psychological damage that does, and Christiana could speak on it more than me, but the damage that does both to the body as well as the psyche, changing your diet can help with that. So Lori,
So,
can you
yeah.
speak more on how changing your nutrition helps with the mind part? Because the biggest issue that you find in traditional medicine is the separation, not only of separating the body into different pieces, but skipping out on the mind, body, spirit that has to do with health.
Right, right, right. And our vagus nerve is in our gut, goes from our gut to our brain. And it's bi-directional. It goes in two directions. So if you're feeling anxiety or depression, it's going to input into your gut and make for some changes. And then if your gut is off, it's going to affect your vagus nerve. So, which came first, the chicken or the egg, we don't know, but it's bi-directional. But it behooves us to take care of our gut and motility, and to also address, whether it's, you know, microdosing, or whether it's doing a deep kind of psychologically releasing experience, whichever it is, but you still can't go out and eat McDonald's and fries after that.
And if you don't want to go super hard, you can always try hypnotherapy.
Right.
We have a great hypnotherapist on the platform, that Sarah Green, and she helps women and men that deal with PTSD. And one thing that she's made me realize is that there's a thing called complex PTSD, because not all veterans experience PTSD,
Right.
but people who might be abused as children, might be robbed, they experience complex PTSD, which it can lead to going into the military and lead to the PTSD cycle repeating. So that's another thing to look into if you have PTSD, is working with a nutritionist like
Right.
Lori to help you in, as you mentioned, with your gut health, but also working with a hypnotherapist can help you to get, as you mentioned, out of the brain into the subconscious and help to release those subconscious blocks. And the user says biggest nerve is from the brain to our heart and gut, and yes, it is bi-directional. So 100% right. Great. Thank you for the fact check. But it's fantastic to see how providers like Lori work in conjunction with other providers that are in other fields to help you with that mind, body, spirit that we're missing, especially in Western countries. You look at places in Pakistan, India, even here in Mexico, or in South America as well. You don't see, self deletion that much. You don't see anxiety that much. And it's because they base on a mind, body, spirit. They eat a lot healthier. They're outside more, so they get that vitamin D, like Lori mentioned. And there's a community. There's more of a communal aspect. In the states, we're missing that community. That especially in the millennials and Gen Z and even
Right.
Gen Alpha, they're missing that community aspect. So it's really all connected. And that's why we made this platform, because we want different providers to work in different specialties. But unlike traditional medicine, they all work in conjunction. Like Lori mentioned, when she was in that hospital, they saw her as a threat. In
Right.
this field, we don't see each other as threats. We see each other as allies to help the patient to have optimal health. If someone has a miscarriage, they go to Christiana. Then, with working with Christiana and working on that mental aspect, they might go to Lori, or they might go to Sarah Green, or they might go to Kristen Barnes, a naturopath, or they might go to Dr. Tess, a naturopath, who really more helps with diabetes, but it's still all connected. Even if you have diabetes, If you have diabetes, you might go with Lori to lower your blood sugar. You go to Dr. Tess to help with creating a plan to lower your blood sugar. And you might also work with Dr. Amy Wicks, who utilizes different approaches with chiropractic and nutrition and acupuncture to help the body as well. So it's an interconnected system. And that's the truth. The body is an interconnected system. And I think that more people need to realize that.
Right. No, your points are very well taken. And, if I remember back to when my grandmother, was in her 80s, you could talk to the cardiologist, but it was siloed medicine. And the cardiologist had, he would talk to the are you there?
I'm here. I tried this new thing where I'm making you the spotlight.
Oh, okay. But where like the cardiologist would talk to the GP, but this is like in the 80s, and not even in the 80s, probably in the late 70s. But now, there's the platforms that the notes are written in, and you might read what the other doctor is saying or what the specialist is saying. And, the truth is, people aren't talking. The patient gives the information. I'm on this med, this med, this med, and the doctor should know the contraindications. We are so highly siloed, but I think the answer that functional medicine holds is we're looking at someone's physiology from a systems biology perspective. When I worked in the hospital, I will never forget this, but one of our doctors had a patient who was having some GI issues, and she referred the patient to the GI specialist in the hospital. I went to my supervisor because we were more admin, and I just said, should we be doing that? Shouldn't she be doing some testing? Like, why don't we, instead of like endoscopy and colonoscopy, how about a SIBO breath test? How about a stool sample? We can cover both ends. Why are we referring out when we're trying to build up a functional medicine department? And she brought it up at the next meeting, but it's not to say that the doctor needed to take the practice or the care of that patient back, but functional medicine doctors, unless they're specializing, they are deeply able to look at all the systems together. And their job is to play detective to figure out what are the root causes or the one root cause. What is making this person not experience optimal health?
It's a great point. And that's the biggest question people don't have the answer to.
Say that again?
I said that's the biggest question that traditional medicine doesn't have the answer to.
No, it never. It's put a Band-Aid on it. Your cholesterol's high, give you a statin. We'll worry about it when you get high blood sugar and Alzheimer's when we get there.
Yeah,
We'll have
exactly.
a drug for that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I've learned about these medications is they actually lower the immune system
Oh,
so
they're
that we
horrible.
become dependent on the pill. What I found is like for headaches, drinking water slowly, this is for me, drinking water extremely slowly and doing breath work has helped me immensely for
Great.
when it comes to headaches. And this user says there's so many changes that hospitals need to do to help patients and save lives. And she's 100% right.
Right. I mean, medicine shines when there's a true emergency. You break a bone, you're not in the outback in Australia where they have shamans that can heal you, fine. You have a heart attack, medicine will save you. Traditional medicine will save you. But I think we, as human people, human beings, need to take back charge of our health and need to be informed consumers. When I go to my medical doctor, here, these are the blood tests I want.
Yep.
Oh, your insurance company won't cover. Yes, my insurance company will cover. Don't even worry about that. Just put it in there. You need these codes to make sure it's covered. And it's unfortunate, but who's living in your body? You are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't let somebody else take charge of your health. Don't just take a medicine blindly.
That's another reason. Oh, sorry.
No, that's the worst thing to do. My doctor gave me this. I'm going to take it.
That's another reason why we made the platform, because as Lori mentioned, people need to be informed consumers. When you buy anything, you need to research first. You probably, when you're looking to buy something, you probably did the research first. I did the same thing. I'm so cheap that what I do is I'll go to 3 different restaurants, determine which one's the cheapest, and then go there. So I'm extensively on research for me. But it seems like when it comes to medicine, the research isn't there like it should be. We should be researching, as far as consumers, we should be researching, like Lori said, doing the test, going to the doctor with the information so that we can be informed on the decisions that we make.
Well, to your point, Sam, who pays for the medical school that our medical students go to?
Rockefellers.
Yeah, big pharma. And who pays who pays for this education is shaping the education to be drug centric.
Yeah.
Always look where the money is going. Always look at COVID, look at the treatment of COVID and
Yeah.
the mandates. We have to really be aware.
Any thoughts?
No, look, my friend, it's getting late. It's 1:15 here now in the UK.
Oh,
AM.
It's my time at 1:15, right?
Yeah.
We'll call it. So I just want to say thank you, Amy. Thank you, Christiana, for joining. Lori, it's always a pleasure getting to speak with you.
Thank you, Lori. That's a great
Thank you. It's been great. And Christiana, thanks for your comments.
Tomorrow we'll do another spotlight with another provider. So make sure to stay tuned. And I'm looking to get Lori possibly another day this week as well. So I'll speak with Lori and get her on possibly this week. So stay tuned for that. I'll do a better job at getting the invites out so that people can see this. But thank you for joining us for our first episode of DecentMed Spotlight. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
You too, my friend. Well done, Sam. Well done, Lori. Take care, people.
Nice to meet you.
Same here for sure. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye. Sleep well.